It's one of the most iconic moments in the history of golf. The locale, the 18th hole on the stadium course at the Players' Championship. The opponent had won 10 of his previous 16 starts. The golf world was looking for someone who could tame a tiger.
Be the right club.
And with a 6-iron from 179, the moment was born.
Be the right club. Welcome
to the Be the Right Club Today podcast, presented by Makefield Putters.
Be the right club today.
Now, here are your hosts, Mark Greenhalgh and Todd Burrell.
Welcome back to the Be the Right Club Today podcast, presented by Makefield Putters. Mark Greenhalgh here with Todd Burrell this week. And Todd, how's it going, man? Hadn't seen you in a few weeks.
It's going great. One of my favorite weeks of the year. U.S. Open, Father's Day. Let's go.
Nice. And update on me, I actually played 9 holes last week, so no pain from the shoulder. So there you go. The rehab and the cortisone shot have done their job. Going to test it with 18 holes on Friday, so we'll see how it all plays out.
And then we can play a match. I'm looking forward to it.
There you go. Tonight, we are going to welcome in Golf Today UK's Matt Ward. Matt, welcome into the podcast.
Pleasure to be with you guys.
Yeah, as Todd said, just a little event going on up in New York on one of the many special courses in Long Island at Shinnecock. And I'm going to jump right into it, Matt. Scottie Scheffler has a chance for the career Grand Slam, finishing up on nothing other than his birthday, I think, on Sunday, turning 30. What do you make of the Scottie Scheffler year so far as we go into the U.S. Open week, and where do you kind of put him in your odds of winning?
Well, to answer your question, let's start with his year. His year would be an extraordinary one for just about anybody else but him, because he won so many times over the last 2-3 years. When you win 2 majors in a year like he did last year, the bar has gone up considerably, but he is still playing at a high level. Now, he has not played consistently well at the start of events, so he's had to overcome a big-time deficit. However, I will say that if he is in form, if he can get close to that, and if the USGA can have Shinnecock prepared correctly, then I think he is definitely going to be, without a doubt, one of the key players coming down the stretch on Father's Day. Now, whether he wins or loses, well, that's hard to say, but let's be clear. If he did win, how important would that be to his career? Well, he really jumps up several more notches just because of that, because there's been only a handful of guys ever had the career Grand Slam. To do it on Father's Day, on your birthday, at Shinnecock Hills, that's impressive. No doubt about it.
And Todd, where are you with Scottie? I mean, it's interesting. I was looking at world ranking points earlier, and he's got the most this year. And you wouldn't think that because of the struggle with the air quotes that we've put him in so far this year, other than the win back in January.
Well, I'm going to echo a lot of what Matt just said. I mean, Scottie's year is fantastic if you're not looking at what he's done in the past 2, 3, 4 seasons. He's set the bar remarkably high. We've talked about it. We've referenced it a number of times. He's at times played a tiger-like when it comes to contending and winning major golf tournaments. It almost got to a point there where you just expected him to be up there and winning almost every week. Now, he has struggled throughout his career, more so recently with the early rounds of golf tournaments, but he always seems to be there in the big ones, even if he struggles early in the week. So like Matt said, if he can get off to a decent start, it's kind of like Tiger back in the day at Augusta. If he could shoot even par the first day, you were like, okay, it's probably going to be him and someone else coming down the stretch on Sunday. So Scottie just can't lose the golf tournament the first day or two, and I think he's going to be very, very relevant on the weekend.
And Matt, when you get to the career Grand Slam, like you said, there's only a handful of guys that have won this. I mean, we've seen, Arnold Palmer doesn't have the career Grand Slam. Jordan Spieth in his great run didn't capture the career Grand Slam. So there's been plenty of guys that have had the opportunity to do it and haven't sealed the deal. But for Scotty, this is coming on a venue where he's not stepped foot on it until today.
Well, I'll be honest with you. That was the same thing that Ray Floyd said back in 1986. He had never been at Shinnecock Hills. A lot of guys, folks, I mean, you guys probably realize this. The average fan thinks that on the off day and off week that these guys are gallivanting and playing all these places. That does not happen. I mean, when they are familiar with certain venues, like a Quail Hollow or Pebble Beach, places that are, that have hosted majors and tour events. Riviera is a good example of that. But yeah, I mean, the magic about Shinnecock Hills is that it's not seen that often. And it's like Muirfield in Scotland. To me, those are really comparable situations between two different type of venues. I mean, Shinnecock on our side of the pond, and then Muirfield for the Open Championship. And I think it's going to be an interesting situation. I mean, keep in mind, guys, the people who have won at Shinnecock are all different types of players. I mean, Ray Floyd, Corey Pavin, Retief Goosen, Brooks Koepka. So it's not about power or about any particular style of play. It'll be very interesting. I can't say this enough. How does the USGA get Shinnecock? Because unfortunately, that has become too much of the storyline at the 04 and at the 18 events. And if they allow the golf course to be what it is, I think it's going to be a fantastic test of golf, without question. And I think the best player will be there at the end when it counts, simply because the test is simply first rate. I mean, among all the Opens I've ever been at, I've attended every one that they've had at Shinnecock, not the first one in 1896, but I've seen them all. And it's a spectacular treat for everybody to see on television, and certainly for the players who will be playing there. I think it's going to be a fantastic venue. And I think we're going to get a real kind of champion that a U.S. Open title should bring.
Well, Matt, you referenced 2004 and 2018. Of course, for those of us who watched those Opens, they were cringeworthy at times with the state of the greens. And, what I recall about the Goosen Open was, I mean, they were syringing greens, I think, between groups at one point on one of the holes. But Goosen putted out of his mind, considering the conditions. It was incredible.
11 one-putts.
It was incredible.
11 one-putts.
Yeah, it was unfathomable with what was going on. There was barely any grass on some of those greens. That was just a phenomenal putting performance. But you're right. Corey Pavin, one of the shortest hitters on tour, wins there, beating Greg Norman in that historic Open with, I think it was a 4 or 5 wood into 18 that he hit. Phenomenal shot. And then Koepka as well putted well in his Shinnecock Open. I just hope they've learned their lesson, they being the USGA, and they really ease their way into how they want the greens to react throughout the week. I think they've learned quite a bit. I think technology's a lot better when it comes to maintenance of the greens throughout a tournament. I know they like to ride a fine line with the greens in US Open championships. I just hope they ease their way into it so that the greens, the golf course condition doesn't get away from them, and it's not the headline of the week.
Well, I think you have to keep this in mind. I heard that from Mike Davis after the 04 event, that we're going to get the 18 event right. And the sad part about it is, Shinnecock is exposed, guys. If you get those greens too firm, you really don't have many pinnable areas at a certain point. I mean, and then you have the closely mown areas right off the greens. And, the seventh hole, the Redan hole, I mean, it got to the point where literally all you needed was the clowns and the Fruit Loops. And I mean, it just got out of control. I mean, it was beyond silly. And then Phil Mickelson did his accentuation act in 18 when he wants to hit a moving ball on 13. I mean, it was, I mean, that was bizarre. I mean, how that all turned out. I agree with you, though, Todd. I'd love to just see them play the golf course. Let's just find out who can play. And I really believe that this time around, it's my hope, at least, that they'll have the golf course prepared sufficiently. I mean, it's 7,400 yards, par 70. So they've lengthened the golf course to be in comparable terms to today's equipment. So it'll be interesting to see, how these guys play. But, at a U.S. Open, the most important thing from the times I've covered the championship, it's not whether you can play a certain shot. The question is, should you play a given shot? And a lot of guys can't seem to take their foot off the gas and realize that bogey is not a bad score sometimes. And if you push the envelope, there are holes out there that can push back. And you can't be making doubles and triples because there aren't that many birdie holes that you're going to be able to successfully negotiate when you play there. So you have to be really locked in to a sound game plan. If you can do that and maintain the discipline for 72 holes, you have a really good shot at being there at the end.
Well, I mean, when you look at it, I mean, Aronimeng played the similar. I mean, it takes Aaron Rai to have a flawless back nine to pull away at the PGA Championship. I mean, knocking in putts like he did on 17 that I still don't think he believes went in the hole. But, it looks like from all signals that they're going to try and take the green speeds down a little bit. But, I mean, I've read something that said that, if that wind kicks up, and they're talking about wind kicking up later in the week, maybe 20 and 30 miles an hour, that, green speeds at Shinnecock can go from 10 to 13 from morning to afternoon without anything being done to them. So, I mean, it does come down to the wind, and the wind is what does, irritate golfers more than anything else is blustery, gusty conditions. And add that into greens that can get going quick, and, you could get things a little out of control. But if they start them in the right spot this time, I think to your point, Matt, that's where we go. I think they started on the edge the last two times, and it went over the edge.
Well, I think the most important thing to remember is, guys, that Shinnecock and the membership, especially the leadership at the club, after the 04 event, it took a long time for the club to be convinced that, they were not going to be made out to be an embarrassment for the championship. I mean, you're talking about a titan among American golf in Shinnecock Hills. I mean, I don't know of any other venue. I mean, you could say Augusta National, okay, but at the top of the pecking order, probably 1 and 1A with Oakmont. This is a vintage site. They're not going to have a PGA Tour event. There will never be a PGA Championship at Shinnecock Hills. As a founding member of the USGA, that is the Open. And they were prepared to walk. I mean, if it came down to that, because they don't want to have an embarrassment of the championship. And the USGA has to they have recognized it, because now Shinnecock is among the core courses for the championship. But this is the US Open. It should not become a putt-putt contest where you see that on tour a lot of times, or 20 under par. You're going to have to think tactically. And, Mark, you just said it best there. Wind direction. I mean, right now in the New York area, we had a cool front come through. Temperatures are in the high 70s. Wind was blowing in Manhattan. Out on the island, it's even stronger. And we're expecting really generally, continual good temperatures, nothing super hot, but there will be wind. And you're going to have to adjust your game, because the routing by William Flynn at Shinnecock is one of the finest that I've ever seen in major championship play. It is that good, and I don't think they have to doctor the golf course to get an end result that would really be an artificial situation.
Yeah, when have you ever heard the greens are too slow at a U.S. Open, right? So I think I tend to agree with Mark, like in what he said. I hope they start off a little on the conservative side, especially if the forecast is for sun, maybe not the extreme heat we've seen in the past, but for sun and wind, because we know they're going to dry out. Guys can putt 13 green. They do that all the time on the tour. That's not the issue. When they start to lose the greens and they start to lose grass and they start to have inconsistencies where a certain putt rolls this speed and a certain putt rolls this speed, or a long putt is fast for the first 5 feet because there's no grass there and then it slows down, that's when things get a little bit tricky. And that's when things get, I think, to where the membership is kind of like, oh boy, this is not good. A good look for our club.
Yeah, one of the things that I think that Shinnecock has done well, I mean, at the 18 event, you get the fairways really firm. That negates the bomb and gouge type guys because you have to know where the ball's going to stop after it hits the ground.
Right.
And, and I think that's one of the joys of watching links golf when they play the Open Championship, because it's not just going to be about, hey, I pounded 340, the ball hits a pitch mark, and it stayed at 345. Well, that's not going to happen.
No.
And, if the firmness of the fairways gets really good, that's fine. But I agree with you and Mark. I mean, that, you don't have to get silly with the green speeds. When you have closely cropped areas off these greens, like the 10th hole or the 9th hole at Shinnecock, if you're so much as a centimeter short, it's coming back 30, 40 yards down the fairway. That's fine. There's nothing silly about that. But what really becomes silly is when the greens get so fast that you can only keep the pins in certain places all the time because the other places can't be pinned because the ball will never stop. It'll just keep rolling aside. This seems so like common sense, but I only hope they get it right this time. The 04 and 018 events did not have to be the way they were. And it's a credit to the people who won those events that they were able to survive situations that were extremely demanding.
The greens are one thing, but when you think about a U.S. Open historically, rough is a big part of it. And what have you heard this week, Matt, about what the primary and secondary cuts are going to start at, if anything? Have you heard anything about kind of where they're going to gauge that?
Yeah, I was out at the course a couple of weeks back, and they were doing final prep work and getting everything ready. I think what you're going to see, for the championship is that they're going to tempt players to go with the big shot. I mean, you don't want to make the golf course in such a way that it's a straitjacket at 20 yards, because these guys are not fools. I mean, they're not going to hit driver just for the sake of hitting driver. They're going to be tempted on certain holes. There's only 2 par 5s at Shinnecock, the 5th and the 16th. So you have these fairways, and the way the fairways are cut at Shinnecock is sort of like serpentine movement. So they're not straight razor cuts. So you have to decide, do you find a gain by going deeper off the fairway with a tee shot, or do you lay back? And then if you decide and you miss, well, the USGA's philosophy is that there's at least a half shot penalty. If you miss by a good distance at Shinnecock, it's going to be sand wedge or wedge going sideways, because they've pushed back the amount of gallery so that the gallery will not be walking and pushing down the rough. So, it pays to be straight. You don't have to be razor straight, but it's not going to take the driver out of hands for those guys who feel really confident that they can send it out there a long ways, but also keep it in play. And I think that's a fair combination of both power and accuracy.
Yeah, the USGA frustrates me a little bit. I mean, I go back a couple years ago to Pinehurst, and you look at the 5th hole, and Rory hits a great tee shot, hits a great second shot into the 5th hole, and I mean the ball's a foot from the middle of the green, and it comes rolling off the green, and I'm okay with that piece. But you look where that ball ended up, if you remember that, Matt. I mean, that ball rolled 40, 50 yards around a bunker, down the hill, and down into, like, the worst lie in a natural area. And I'm like, the guy hit it into the middle of a green. And to me, that's the kind of stuff that I think we need to get away from when you're testing these guys. I mean, you're talking about one of the best players in the world hitting 2 great shots, coming up, I mean, it could have been 6 inches from stopping, and ends up in this ridiculous spot. Now, like I said, I'm okay if it rolls off the green into a pitching area, or even rolled into the bunker, and gives him an actual play to get it up and down for birdie after 2 good shots. And he ended up making 6, barely, after hitting 2 great shots. I mean, Augusta is not even that penal when you miss something by 6 inches. So, I'd like to see the USGA maybe adapt a little bit more of the PGA, where guys get rewarded for good shots and do get penalized for bad shots. And I don't think there's enough of that sometimes in the U.S. Open.
Well, one of the things that to credit the USGA, I mean, I will say this: if you had told me that a tour player would be on the executive committee, I would have said that's impossible. That's like saying a Protestant is going to be Pope. I mean, that's just not going to happen. Well, Nick Price was on the executive committee. Jason Gore was the first player relations guy that the USGA said, hey, we need to get some input from the players, okay? Because day to day, week to week, setting up a golf course. I mean, you see how successful Kerry Haig is with the PGA Championship. I mean, it's always done really, really well. I mean, for the most part. The R&A does a really good job at the Open Championship, and Augusta is very smart on how they dial up and dial down the difficulty of the golf course. But I think on the case with the USGA, it's been a learning process. I think they've seen certain things that certainly they would need to correct. I, like you, Todd, I'm excited. I mean, there is no greater week to me in golf, besides the Open Championship, than the U.S. Open. I mean, to me, it encapsulates so much of what makes American golf, or golf in general, be what it is. But I would love to see Shinnecock have the kind of theater that we had at a Torrey Pines, which is not architecturally compelling, but yet we had probably one of the greatest championships when Tiger took out Rocco Mediate in 91 holes. I wish that Shinnecock could have that. I can remember when Muirfield had the 13 Open Championship, and Phil won there a week after Merion. And we had a fantastic Open Championship, one of the best that's been played. And I'm just hoping that Shinnecock will be set up that way so that we can get the kind of theater that makes a U.S. Open champion be as special as it can be.
Yeah, as am I. Would you guys agree that the USGA, I would say, in the last 15 to 20 years has kind of gotten away from that U.S. Open identity of narrow, firm, fast fairways, long, rough, challenging greens that are firm and fast. I mean, I kind of feel like you look back at Opens like Chambers Bay and you look back at some of the other...
Erin Hills.
Yeah, I feel like they've kind of lost their way at times. I hope they're getting back to that. I think with a venue like Shinnecock, they have an opportunity to do that. What do you think, Matt? Do you think that's an accurate assessment, or do you feel like they're trying to change it up every year, or do you feel like the U.S. Open, it's supposed to be the toughest test in golf, right? That's always the way I kind of thought of it growing up when I was watching Opens. What's your feeling on that assessment?
Well, I think first off, they did this exploratory thing, what you just mentioned about Erin Hills and Chambers Bay, and looking back, they had good champions at both. I mean, Jordan Spieth winning and Brooks Koepka winning. Yeah. They were good champions. However, the venues, they just didn't turn out to be what they should have been or could have been. I do think that having a core set of golf courses, so much similar to what the R&A does, with Shinnecock, Oakmont, Pebble Beach, and Pinehurst, that's your core four. And then you have right behind that, you have Oakland Hills, Oak Hill. You certainly have Merion coming up a couple of times. Inverness will come up in the years to come. Those are all really solid, first-rate golf courses. The key to any of this, guys, is the setup. You cannot see one of the things that happened at the 2018 event, after the debacle with Phil on Saturday. They basically put the pins in the middle of the greens, and Tommy Fleetwood almost shoots 62 on the last day. Right. He almost won the tournament. If Brooks Koepka doesn't play dynamite golf, knowing that Fleetwood has already been done for 9 holes, I mean, they overreacted the other way, which is, hey, guys, look, we got to get this right for 4 days in a row. And we've got to make sure that the setup, you're going to get players criticized, Todd. I mean, a guy who shoots 78 after he's 20 under per week, he's going to be screaming about something. I mean, they're never going to say, hey, man, I just screwed up. You don't see players. It's always going to be looking for somebody to blame. I have no issue with players. If they want to blame somebody, blame the USGA. That's like blaming the referee. But I think when you get a quality venue, you don't have to play around with it. I mean, it speaks for itself. It has done so well so many times, like Oakmont has done, or Pebble. They have been there. They've done it. And I think it's a credit, hopefully, and I say this hopefully, that people have listened about what's taken place before. I mean, they're smart people there, guys. I know they're taking a lot of hits. I'm one of the first. But the reality is, I know that they listen. If you had told me, like I said before, Nick Price would be on the executive committee, I would have said that would never have happened years ago. But they have done that. And now it's a question of, okay, now that we've all done the talking, now we got to execute come Thursday morning when the game starts. And then we're going to find out one way or the other.
All right, we're going to take a quick break and talk about Makefield putters made in the USA. Go to makefieldgolf.com. Check them out, all of the different styles. Todd keeps taunting me with the blade that Makefield has come out with this year. They also have the mallet putters, all the different styles, all the different logos, all the different things that you can do to them. The personalization, put them in colors, different bends in the shaft, different lengths, different lies, different weights. If you pull it a little bit, they're going to put the weight out there in the toe to try and lag that out a little bit. So I keep saying that Brooks Koepka might need one of these things. Also remember Peak Vision. See like you've never seen before with Peak Vision sunglasses. The difference is immediate. Get ready for the season and use the code GS15 at peakvision.com. Also, Todd, go out to BeTheRightClubToday.com. Listen to all of the podcasts and get your gear. Got you a little Be the Right Club. There's Hal Sutton for you after his shot at 18 at Sawgrass. So I got the logo. I got the man.
Mine must have got lost in the mail.
Got a hoodie too. The hoodie's pretty nice.
Oh, don't taunt me. Don't taunt me.
I'm going to wear the hoodie next time you're on just for you. So go out, check it out, and do your shopping out there for Father's Day. Buy yourself something nice, Todd. Get yourself something nice for Father's Day.
You hit at least 18 putts around, more like low 30s. So you better make sure you got the right putter in your hand. And I don't think people have spent enough time trying to make sure they have that. Hi, I'm Hal Sutton. 25 years ago, I had the right club at the right moment, and it made a huge difference. Today, I've teamed up with Makefield Putters. I now use the right putter today. You see, Makefield has unique radial cusp technology. The ball releases faster off the face and keeps the ball rolling more on its axis. The result is a straighter putt, more on target. When you get everything just right, the putter that fits you just right, the one that you believe in, your confidence should be oozing out of you. So I would encourage all consumers, go to the Makefield website and educate yourself and get fitted correctly, get the right putter in your hand, and there's hope for better putting ahead.
Golf is challenging enough. Between the sandbagging bandits, the wind, rain, and your homemade swing, it sometimes feels impossible. You need a legal 15th club. You need Peak Vision sunglasses. 4 to 5 hours of protection against glare and ultraviolet light with clarity as clear as crown glass. That's Peak Vision sunglasses, your secret 15th club, giving you one less obstacle to overcome. Just one try is all it takes, and the price is less than national brands. Use the code GS15 at peakvision.com. All right, back to it. Be the Right Club Today podcast presented by Makefield Putters. Mark Greenhouse, Todd Burrell, joined by Matt Ward of Golf Today UK. And Matt, Europeans have taken the first two majors of the year. U.S. Open, man, we want the USA to win this one. What do you think? Are we looking at a little more European dominance, or are we going to get a U.S. winner this time around?
It's hard to say. I mean, it's a credit what you said before about Aaron Rai. World golf today, guys, is so competitive, more than ever before. It does not take much. I mean, frankly, being a Jersey guy as I am, who ever heard of Chris Gotterup until last year, for the most part? The guy wins the Scottish Open. He's paired with Rory. Nobody would have thought he would win. He did. The talent level is enormous. But I will say this. You know what a U.S. Open title means. That's forever. That never, ever leaves, okay? And it will take a certain player to handle that kind of heat when you get down to the final nine. The back nine at Shinnecock is world-class golf. There is not a single hole that is a weak link in that stretch. And you are going to have to demonstrate a tremendous amount of resilience because there will be breakdowns. in your swing. The Europeans have been successful, but I wouldn't take a back seat with some of the other players obviously on the American side. Clearly, Scotty being at the top. But you have to tip your hat. I'll be interested to see if Rory comes out of his Masters malaise. I mean, last year he won the Masters, and then basically he was kind of in limbo. I'll be curious to see, how ready he is to go. And clearly, Todd, you just mentioned before, can Scotty shoot a number? I mean, a decent number on round one,
Yeah.
and then we go from there. Um, that's very that's going to be crucial to setting up an event. But nobody is out of this thing, guys. If you're 6, 7 shots behind, you get bad wind on the last day, and you got guys folding like cheap suits. Things can change. I mean, you could have a guy post a score. If you remember, Colin Montgomery almost won the Open at Pebble 2.5 hours before Tom Kite finished.
That's right.
And he almost won the event. And Jack Nicklaus said on TV, congratulations, you, Colin. Looks like you're going to win. Well, Tom Kite survived. That can happen. And I think anybody who's in play out here should never give up in a U.S. Open because things can turn real fast. And in a place like this, and if conditions get anything close to being what they should or can be for a championship.
All right, Todd. I know you'd like a Canadian to win, but U.S. or European dominance for this U.S. Open? What do you think?
Well, I don't know if we're to predictions yet, so I'm not going to say who I think's going to win, but I do feel like the odds say an American's going to win this, just based on the fact that, 2 Europeans have already got majors this year. I've got a guy in mind. When it's time, I'll reveal that, but I do feel like we're going to have an American champion at this event.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's, traditionally the U.S. Open is a USA winner. You haven't had too many European champions come over and do that. Guys like Colin Montgomery, who dominated for years on the European tour, never got wins on American soil. We've seen other guys struggle getting wins on American soil, so it's been very strange. I mean, Tommy Fleetwood coming into this year, you felt like he was a guy that was going to break through and win a major with the way he finished up last year, winning the Tour Championship, the FedEx Cup, all that stuff. And we haven't really seen Tommy with that late season form come back yet. Matt, is that somebody that you're looking at? I mean, he's got a good track record on this course, albeit, it was on the day that it was made easier, but you got to think he's somebody that you got to take a look at.
Oh, I wouldn't count out anybody who's in. You could go as far as the top 50 in the world. Okay, I mean, I think what you're seeing at some of these championships now, I could say this much: you're seeing less of the Sean McKeels, the Ben Curtises. You don't see that much of that. That does happen, okay? And obviously, when U.S. Open lore, guys like Jack Fleck taking out Hogan, those kind of Rocco Mediate would have been that if he had taken out Tiger. But what you're seeing is you don't see that often. Todd Hamilton won the Open Championship. You don't see that as much now. Usually, it's a pretty much thoroughbred type player. He may not be at the super elite level, like the top 5 or 6 or 10 players in the world, but the core of the golf that's played is really at a high level now. And it's remarkable that these guys are able to do it to the consistency that they do. And I mean, particularly Scotty over the last several years. I mean, the gap between 1 and number 2 is probably at one point in time was greater than what it was between 2 going to 3. So he's got to still be in the picture. I'm still sold on him until he shows me otherwise. I don't think he'd be smart to take anybody else in the field, given what he's capable of doing.
All right. So with that said, it sounds like you're taking Scotty Scheffler. Is there anybody else? If I gave you 3 picks, who would be your 3 guys, Matt? Scotty's obviously one of them.
Well, until he had the hand injury in Canada, I would have said Brooks. I think that Brooks is the kind of dangerous guy that he can rise his game. But now, I'd have to say that doesn't seem like like somebody you can put your finger on. If you want to talk about European guys who's pretty steady, and he's up there in age. Justin Rose, another capable player. Tommy Fleetwood, yeah, I mean, he is due for something. It's possible. Um, on the American side, boy, there's a whole list of guys that are there. I would say it's wide open. This U.S. Open, guys, is probably as wide open, in a lot of ways, not totally, because we're now seeing the return of a classic venue, just like we did with Oakmont. And Oakmont produced J.J. Spawn last year. So it'll be interesting to see whether or not that continues, whether or not we get a top elite player, but not someone at the top 4 or 5 position. It'll be very interesting to watch. I'm excited. I can't wait for Thursday to start. It's just a fantastic venue, and I'm glad to see that we're back on Eastern Long Island.
All right, Todd, you were holding your cards to the vest here. If I gave you 3 picks, who you got?
Well, very, very difficult to argue with the Scotty pick, so let's just include that in my 3. But I'm going to throw a European and I'm going to throw an American in there. These are the 2 guys I'm focused on. On the European side, I'm going to look at Matt Fitzpatrick. Been playing great, obviously plays well in these types of venues, has won before. And then my American, and this one, you guys may disagree with this, but he's been there recently, hasn't won it. I think it's his time to break through. Good putter, good ball striker, Sam Burns.
Sam Burns, who I think kind of got the shaft last year. Definitely casual water, and that may have cost him the U.S. Open last year.
Yeah, I like Sam Burns. I think he's gathered a lot of experience over the last couple of years contending in major events, being right there. As you mentioned, he had some adversity that he's surely bounced back from. He's continued to play well. I think it's his time. If I had to choose an American other than Scotty, I would probably say Sam Burns is one of those guys in that, like Matt referenced, not the top tier of American golf, but he's right there. Like he's a Ryder Cupper. He's been hovering up near that top tier for quite some time.
Matt and Todd, I am not going to take Scotty Scheffler, so I'll let you guys keep him in your rotation. Call me crazy. I do love Matt Fitzpatrick. To your point, Todd, Matt Fitzpatrick is the person who has the second most world ranking points gained in 2026 to Scotty Scheffler. And he does seem to show up at very difficult venues because he's does hit the ball a little bit longer than average now, so he has lengthened himself out. He's a good putter, but he is just a solid ball striker. Doesn't really hit a lot of bad shots, doesn't necessarily hit a lot of great shots, but this is the kind of venue where I think he could thrive on. Matt, I'm with you. I was on the Brooks Koepka train as well because I thought things were really coming together for him. But this injury, whether it's something in that arm, elbow, wrist, or elbow down to the wrist, it's going to be a concern unless I see something dramatically change by Wednesday. I'm kind of off of that bandwagon. I'm going to throw a couple guys out there. One of my darker horses would be a Patrick Reed, another guy who's just a great ball striker and just goes about his business and has been showing up in the majors despite not playing in a whole lot of places because of his current suspension on the PGA Tour and coming back from LIV. So keep an eye on him. But Matt, I want you to you're a New York, New Jersey guy. Talk me in or out of Cam Young. We know going into Bethpage, he had played that probably more than any person that was going to tee it up during the Ryder Cup. What's his experience at Shinnecock right down the road? Has he played it a bunch?
Yeah, he's been there. I mean, I don't think you could, take anything away from what he's done. Obviously, there's another name. I mean, you reference a guy that comes out of the New York/New Jersey metro section. Clearly, he elevated his name dramatically at the Players. He came very close at the Open Championship. When Cam Smith was there, very close, eagled the last hole. And that was not seen by a lot of players or people in the media about Cam Young. Yeah, you cannot discount the thing that guys that always concerns me about U.S. Open. There are a lot of guys that can make birdies. Can you avoid the big number? Can you make sure that you don't take yourself out of the tournament? And Matt Fitzpatrick has proven himself. He won the championship at the Country Club a few years ago. Um, I wouldn't be surprised with any of the key names. I just don't think you're going to see the wild dark horses at a place like Shinnecock. I just don't see how they can handle 72 holes on something like that. So any one of the picks that you guys have made, you can make a good case for. And I think, clearly they have the capabilities in the game to do it.
You stated it perfectly. The U.S. Open is really won by avoiding the train wreck. If you can avoid others, and when you're in trouble, salvage bogey and move on. Pars and bogeys aren't bad. You're going to make a few birdies here and there, but it's the doubles, the triples, and the others beyond that can end your tournament in one hole.
Well, you just look at the guys who held the championship the most times. I mean, besides Willie Anderson, I mean, Bob Jones won it 4 times. Hogan won it 4 times. Nicklaus won it 4 times. Woods won it 3 times. All of these guys are not just consummate, shot makers, but tacticians. They know how to plot themselves around the golf course. And to borrow that tired phrase from Clint Eastwood from one of his movies, a man's got to know his limitations. And that's something that is going to have to come up in a U.S. Open. I mean, like I said before, guys, there are people that will try shots. Rory is a good testament to this. I think Rory sometimes falls in love with his talent to the point in which he just throws caution to the wind, and then he does shots that are totally unnecessary. You don't have to take yourself out. You don't have to show people that you can play the shot. And I think the difference between Scheffler and a McIlroy is Scheffler follows the Nicklaus playbook. Just keep yourself in it. Keep extending the play, making sure you stay in the game. If you can get to Sunday and you're close to the lead, you'll have a shot. You don't have to expend all that energy on taking high risks with low gains. So I'm going to be interested to see how this all plays out. Clearly, the setup dictates so much of what happens with the championship, and I'm hopeful that the USGA has really put this together in such a way that we won't be talking about this anymore, but we'll talk about what the players are doing on such a classic course.
What do you think Todd's winning score?
Winning score for the tournament, I've got -1.
Matt, what do you got?
I think it'll be a little bit lower. I actually think that they'll dial it down a little bit. To hold guys at that level, guys, you have to create conditions, Todd, like they did at Oakmont, which is you had hay basically off the fairways.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's what you had. I would say right now, if I had to put a number, I would say probably 5 to 6 under, but not many guys under par. I would say probably somewhere around the range of 3, 4, 5 guys under par, but the leader being around 5 or 6 for 72 holes.
Yeah, I was going to say 5 or 6. If the wind comes up on the weekend, I could see guys being at 5 or 6 heading to the weekend and finishing at 3 or 4 under to win the thing. That's kind of where I'm at.
Do you feel like the USGA still targets par like they used to back in the day, or do you feel like that's not as important to them anymore?
I can only guess on that. I think from a standpoint of, there's that old mentality of this is the toughest championship in the world, and we want to see guys do what Hale Irwin did, shot 7 over at Wingfoot, and we want to take joy in seeing guys, go through that misery. I think they've kind of come into a standard playbook about how they want to set these things up. But, guys, weather dictates it all. I mean, you get dry conditions and you don't use smartness, you can lose a golf course. I mean, Zach Johnson said it perfectly in 18. This is a fantastic golf course. They just lost it. Okay. And at that point, it's not skill, it's luck. When did you play? At what time of the day did you get through that hole? You don't want that to be the storyline. No. I mean, this is the U.S. Open. I'm hopeful that they don't maintain that mentality. But I do agree with Sandy Tatum's quote. We're not here to humiliate. We're here to identify the best players. Okay, and I think that's really the mantra for a U.S. Open. It shouldn't be easy. Okay, the legacy of when you win a U.S. Open, that's forever. That will always be on your name card. You know, look when Ken Venturi was introduced on CBS telecast, 1964 U.S. Open champion. It's that kind of event, and we should honor that by having the best conditions so that the best players in the world can do their finest when it counts.
Well, Matt, we really appreciate you being on the podcast with us, and we look forward to finding out, because I know you're going to have boots on the ground, and we'll talk to you soon, and whether it be on the podcast or the radio show, and find out just exactly how Shinnecock held up. So appreciate you being on, Todd. I guess we'll see you in a couple weeks. Hal Sutton will be back next week, and we'll find out who's on Hal's magical wheel of guests that he's going to bring on with us. But that for this week, U.S. Open Week, is the Be the Right Club Today podcast presented by Makefield Putters. Have a good one, guys.
Thank you for listening to Be the Right Club Today with your host, Hal Sutton and Mark Greenhalgh. Presented by Makefield Putters.
The preceding episode was a production of Moonlight Media Works in association with Walk Marketing.